So let's look at the ways that you can actually declare style and apply style inside an HTML document. Now there are three ways to actually declare styles and use them. There's tag style, id style and class style. So I'm just going to go through these and see with some examples so you can see what they look like. So we'll start with tag style, and tag style is the one that we've already done in some of the examples. What we do here is we have a style rule which is applied to a particular tag. So for example, we could say that the background colour for something is going to be black, and the colour of the pen we're going to use is going to be green. Remember the American spelling of colour. And we could say that is going to apply to our H2 elements. So you can see we've got two H2 elements here inside this document, and that green on black colour would be applied to those two H2 elements. Now, id style is a little bit different. And what we do with id is that we can actually create our own names for things, and we can associate a colour or a style to that particular name. What it requires us to do is to use the id attribute. Now these ids have to be unique names, but we just make them up. So let's create a couple of names in here. So for example, let's put one inside this paragraph. So I'm just going to play a little space here, and I'm going to add an id, and it's going to be called introduction. So that word, that name, introduction, I've literally just made that up. It's going to be a unique name that we're going to use in this document. And I've gone id equals introduction. So whatever it is that the name is going to be, we place it inside double quotes, just as if it was an attribute inside any HTML element, because it is an attribute. And we could put another one down here. We go id equals explanation. Now the way that we attach the style to that is a little bit different, because we use a hash symbol. So remember these two names here that I've made up, two ids. I've got introduction and explanation. So if I wanted to attach style to those ids, I use a hashtag, little hash symbol, and then I use the name that I've made up. So hash introduction or hash explanation. And you can see here, I then have the styles in the braces as you would expect. So instead of it being applied to an HTML element, like an H1 or an H2 or something like that, we're actually applying that style to a name that we made up. And bear in mind, the important thing to remember here is that ids should be unique. You shouldn't be reusing id names. You need to make up new id names when you're inside your HTML document. One of the things you need to watch out for is for sort of id mania. Suddenly you could sort of find yourself attaching ids to nearly all the elements inside an HTML page, making up names for things, and there are far too many ids here. So what you tend to do is you use a combination of different styles of attaching tags. So you might attach some tags, you might attach some style to some HTML tags, you might attach some style to some ids. You sort of vary your approach depending upon the document and the design you're going to create. And also you need to be careful about the kind of names you choose, because often you inadvertently think of a name which is describing a sort of the design of the document. So things that, when they're not particularly good names. So for example, my first paragraph isn't a particularly good name when it should really be talking about the context of the content. So, that should really be something like introduction or something like that. A name which is meaningful rather than just something which talks about the structure of the diagram, structure of the document. Now, ids work best with div and span tags. I'm not going to talk about them today, but we will talk about them later on. But in this context, it's where you often see ids being used. And div and span tags are basically a way of adding a sort of invisible box or an invisible structure into the document. So the third way to attach a style is to use classes, a class. And a class is basically a way of grouping a bunch of elements together using a particular name. And this is probably best explained with an example. So let's imagine that you had this web page here and you wanted to attach styles, and say we wanted, that's an H2 element there. So let's say that we wanted that to be blue, but we also wanted this paragraph to be blue. So we've got different parts of the document that will have the same style. You know, we wanted it to be something like that. Well, this is where we use a class. Now, classes, again, we have to add a name into the document, into the HTML. And the way that we do that is we simply add in this attribute called class. So we go class equals, and then we make a name up. So in this instance, I've called it blue style, not a particularly brilliant name, but it'll work. And of course, what we want to do is we want to apply it to that H2, but we also want to apply it to this paragraph. So class equals blue style. Now notice the difference here with ids. Ids are names which we make up, which are unique in the document. In other words, we can only use those names once. Classes are designs that we will reuse in many different places. So you can see that we've used blue style in 2 places. Now with ids, we use the hash symbol, but with classes we use a dot. So here's our style definition for blue style. So we go dot blue style, and you can see what I've done there is I've set the colour to be blue. And that will apply that style to everything that uses that class. I'll just mention here, we can actually be more specific. So for example, we could say h3.bluestyle, and what that would say is look specifically for the h3 tags, and those h3 tags that have a blue style, those are the ones that these style rules will apply to.